Well, guess what you stumbled upon? It's Brad Stine Has Issues with God's Comic Brad Stine, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. And we have a special after-election aftermath edition of Brad Stine Has Issues with special guest Carol Swain, who was a former Vanderbilt teacher, got thrown out because she happens to be black, and then made the horrible selection of becoming a Christian and a conservative. And so she has faced the wrath of progressives who've just faced the wrath of America. And so this is a very, very special assignment. We are talking about a new administration coming, and things are really changing in America in just 1 week. And I'm going to introduce you guys, if you're brand new, to my son, Wyatt Leroy Stine. He used to not exist. I created him, and so I'm going to allow him to intervene and help us too. Wyatt, it's a special day. It's the coming back from the elections breakdown. And last week on Monday with Rick Green, we said, hey, big election coming tomorrow. Who knows what's coming? But it will be between freedom and non-freedom, fascism, literally, totalitarianism, literally, socialism, literally, Marxism, literally, or a return to normalcy, the Constitution as it was originally intended, in the hope of patriots and Americans and conservatives loving their nation and standing for the principles that got us here. And Wyatt, and apparently, they have chosen the latter. What do you think about that, my friend? And when I say latter, I don't mean to make you frightened or melancholy that you no longer work at Lowe's, thus you don't have access to ladders. I mean the L-A-T-T-E-R. So go ahead.
Yeah, you kind of already ruined my joke I was going to make with that. So thank you. Right off the bat. Yeah. Great start to this podcast.
Yeah.
I genuinely was not expecting that result.
What was the result you were expecting?
I was expecting the other one to win.
Who?
Camila, I think. I don't pay attention that much. I don't know.
Camelius. Calamity. I think it was Calamity.
I mean, sounds right.
Yeah, you were. Now, why is it that you thought that she was going to win the election?
It just seemed like we weren't yet at a point where enough people were upset about the previous administration to actually do something about it.
Well, you know what? If you remember in one of our podcasts, and I actually went back to try to find it, and I couldn't find it, I made a prediction. And it might have been a couple weeks ago, might have been this last week. I looked for the Rick Green episode. Prior to that, I didn't see it there. Do you remember me making a prediction? And I too thought that Kamala was going to win the election. You remember me making that prediction?
I think you did. Yeah, I think I remember that.
Do you remember why I thought that she was going to win?
No, that part I skimmed over. It was late and I was tired. There was a new video game out that was playing and I just didn't pay attention.
Yes. Okay. Well, the reason that I thought it wasn't because I didn't think there was plenty of conservatives in America. I did think there were more conservatives than non. I did think there were more patriots than non. I did think there were more Christians than non. I did think there were more libertarians than non. I did think there was more common sense than non. I did think there was more traditionalists than non. I did think there was more constitutionalists than non. I did think there was more those who loved and cherished this nation and its heritage and its traditions than non. I had only one concern, and I think I said it. I hope I did, because I can't find it. Maybe somebody will stumble upon it and let us know. I had only one concern. We had the numbers. Hopefully we had the energy, but I didn't think we could vote anymore. It doesn't matter what numbers you have. If you rig the election, it doesn't matter. You're not going to win because you can't, because you're not actually voting. So if you get 10 billion votes for you and 1 votes for the other guy, and he controls the outcome, then he wins. So that was my concern. Are we even allowed to vote in America? And after the 2020 election was stolen, it was obvious to me that the Republicans didn't care. And that's where it really threw me. Why? Because I figured they're going to jump in and fix this because they have something at stake. They are also wanting to get into the Senate and the House. They also want to represent as governors, right, and mayors and so forth. So why wouldn't they take issue with it being stolen, which is why I knew that they were either compromised, as in they had done something nefarious that they were being blackmailed over, or they're just cowards and they're in on it and they want to destroy us either and pretend that they're the good guys. So Wyatt, I believe this was God's grace intervention. And, you know, the first time that Trump won, 16, do you remember that? I think you were 4.
What? No, what? I was just going to talk about the whole rigging election thing and how that couldn't possibly have been it.
Why is
There's
that?
no way that our election could have been rigged that much.
How
like,
so?
The difference was just too great. For instance, and this is something that I've known.
Yeah.
I had to look up a few things, but I did know this. Do you know what the most rigged election in history was?
I believe that's when they were that was the election for who would represent America in...
Let me clarify. This is not American history. This is
oh.
history.
Yes, this was the election. The Tortuga Islands were trying to...
Close. It was Liberia in 1927.
And what happened in Liberia in 1927?
They had fewer than 15,000 registered voters.
Okay.
And the guy who won with almost 230,000 votes.
Okay. So you're saying that Liberia was notorious for having people who had not registered. They didn't have the time or the ID to register, but they did make an effort to make out and make the vote. They did do that.
That's one way to look at it. I'm not sure that's the correct way, but that is certainly an explanation for this.
So where did you hear about this Liberian?
It was literally in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most fraudulent election in history. I'm just saying, you're not topping that.
Well, you know, and Democrats have got to be frustrated because they found 15 million votes more than what was averaging for the 2 or 3 previous elections and the one after. It was like I think the Democratic candidate got like 65 million, 67, 64.
Yeah, then it shoots up to 80 for some reason.
81 million on the COVID mail-in ballots. We don't need IDs. Nobody's verifying that this is legit. And then this election, it went all the way right back to the 65 or might even been 70 that they were used to. So some amazing. At a time when nobody was going outside, especially Democrats who were mask-wearing, vax-sucking folks, frightened to go anywhere because they were about to get the COVID. But millions and millions of them made sure they made it to the voting booth. And suddenly they didn't show up for this last one. So that's an anomaly to me. That says something is afoot. Something is odd. Something is off. Something is Liberian.
Is that the term for it now?
I think so.
So I've actually been seeing, I'm not sure if it's true, but I have been seeing some posts of like liberals going, maybe we did rig that election.
Have you seen it?
So does it make any sense otherwise?
No. Well, they have to believe that in this so important, we're about to elect a fascist. There's nothing more important than this. And Kamala's got to win, A, because she's a woman of color, and B, because she's a woman. And keep in mind, to a progressive, they believe progress is somebody takes a leadership role or gets a position that has never had it before. So it is not about meritocracy. You know what that means, right? Meritocracy.
Yeah. It means your skills and abilities matter more than anything else.
Right. So if you have earned your melanin and your gender, then
it's meritocracy, not melanocracy.
Right. Well, that's
a common misconception.
It is a common misconception. It is a common misconception, but it's what the left runs on is guilt, If you don't vote for the person of color, it's because you're a racist. It's guilt if you don't vote for a woman. It's because you're a misogynist and a sexist. If you don't vote and you are a woman, it's because you have you're self-oppressed. You hate yourself. It's identity politics. Well, this is what is so amazing to me, so beautiful to me, is that the American people said, we are so sick of being called racist and bigots and Nazis and fascists and intolerant and hateful and phobic because we disagree with your crap, that we're going to destroy you with our votes. And we're also going to have about, I think, 250,000 poll workers that were prepared, maybe a couple hundred lawyers on hand, on the ground, ready to fight any discrepancy that whether this election is legitimate. They went in, they knew exactly what they were doing. I could not believe the machine that they had prepared to defend themselves this time from a potential Liberian scenario. And here we sit watching the impossible. And apparently the 15 million that didn't show up didn't have IDs, and they happened to be voting in red states where you need one to vote. Did you know that every state that Kamala won, the blue state, every one of them, the one thing they had in common was you didn't need an ID to vote?
That doesn't make sense. Like, couldn't someone theoretically just fly over from another country, vote, and then fly back in that case?
I don't think it was a theory, Wyatt. I think that's exactly what happened. What do you think?
It's called a rhetorical question, also known as a loaded question in some cases, like this.
But son, what do you think letting everybody across the border and allowing them to vote was all about? What do you think that was all about?
Apparently, it was all about failing even more spectacularly because it didn't work.
It didn't work. Well, no, and
like, weren't they offering like money, like genuine money for voting? I'm not sure. That might have been like some other country interfering or something, but I know that was a thing that happened.
Yeah, well, what's even more fascinating to me is, and I wanted to get your take on this, she had a lot of the celebrity endorsements. Of course, if you're a Hollywood celebrity, you have to endorse the left because you're open-minded. You have to think like everybody else because you're an independent. You have to bow the knee to the progressive left dictates because you're a free thinker, because you care about democracy and freedom and free choice. You can't really prove how desperately you love freedom unless you vote one way based on the demands of the left. That's the only way you can show how free you are to make your own decisions. Decisions for your own body. Isn't that really the key to being a leftist? I get to make decisions about my own body, and my body tells me that I have to do exactly what I'm demanded to do by the left so that they keep me in their club. Well, guess what? They had actors, George Clooney and Cher and Barbra Streisand and musicians and so forth. Oprah Winfrey, all, of course, supporting her. And here's the other thing, why? Did you know that they paid them? They paid Oprah Winfrey for her endorsement $1 million. Now, my thinking is, if you endorse a candidate, would you need to be paid to endorse them? Doesn't that sound a little...
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure they weren't spokespeople. That's just called a sponsorship.
Yes.
They were sponsored to promote that.
Right. And yet, and I also heard that Alanis Morissette was going to do a concert and lift it for like $20 million or something, and she canceled that endorsement concert because they didn't have the money to pay her. They couldn't, like the check wouldn't clear, so she canceled her endorsement, which means she didn't really care, obviously, in the real world. But we had, and Taylor Swift endorsed her. Now, Taylor's a billionaire. I think she's the first like pop billionaire or something like that, or one of the first. So she doesn't need the money, but they take it anyway. So that was fascinating to me. Why?
I mean, have you seen the metrics and how much they lost on that campaign? Like how much money they lost?
How much?
$1 billion.
See, I'm just saying.
How does your campaign have $1 billion and you not only lose, you lose spectacularly.
Well, what happens is there are people in the earth that we've learned about, especially during Corona, that want to rule the world. And the only way they can rule the world is they have to take out there's one country that has to be destroyed and corrupted and buckled and brought to its knees if there's going to be a one world government. If the World Economic Forum is going to have its way, there's only one country that has to be hamstrung. Guess who that is?
Us.
No, Liberia.
Oh.
Yeah,
Sorry.
because they will fake their elections.
I mean, look. They are experts at faking anything. They could flow under the radar, I'm so supportive of this, and then just right when the moment's ready, to stab it in the back and make the whole thing go away.
Wyatt, when do you expect Liberia to raise its head and suddenly
How many
attack?
people in this audience even know where it is on the map?
Nobody expects Liberia.
Nobody expects Liberia.
Exactly. So here's the key. I wanted to ask you about this. I wanted to ask you, now you had a band when you were like 10, right?
Yeah.
What was the name of that band?
Electric Needlefish.
The Electric Needlefish. You guys wrote
which is probably proof enough that we really were 10 when we came up with it, because oof.
Well, nevertheless.
Add electric to the beginning of any word and it's suddenly cool.
Well, I mean, the Beatles, if you think about it, I remember when I first
The
heard,
Electric Beatles is not a cool sounding name.
you know what though? And you're right. If you add electric, it does make it sound stupid. But I will say this.
The Electric Armadillo.
When I first heard the Beatles, and I first heard them in the 60s, which is when they originated. Okay, so I was alive then. You weren't there then. Do you ever heard of the Beatles?
I know the war.
They had a song or two, if I remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, all three.
I think they faded off into the distance. But I remember when I first heard the Beatles, it made me think of the Bugs, the Beatles, Bugs.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking it was like off-putting. It was like, hey, that's weird. It's like calling yourself the cockroaches or the ladybugs. It just, to me, it's like I don't want to name myself after a bug. And they spelled it Beatlas, so that wasn't even the same. But I think I don't even remember where they got the name. But
I think it was like, I think it had to do with like the high school that they all went to get together. Something like that. I'll remember it as you're continuing to
perhaps
say.
perhaps it'll jog your memory as I continue to cover for you while you jump on the Google. But I just remember thinking the Beatles was a weird name, and it's not a name I would have wanted to have. But nevertheless, they're the most famous band in history, pop band, and most successful. So who cares what I think? But you had a band called the Electric. What is it?
So according to my mind, it's widely accepted that the name came from John Lennon's first wife, Cynthia, who claimed the band came up with the name during a drunken brainstorming session inspired by Buddy Holly's band, The Crickets. Who were the Crickets?
Well, the Crickets was Buddy Holly's backing band.
I wonder where they got their name. Do you think they came up with the name The Crickets in a drunken brainstorming session inspired by the Beatles?
No, they were inspired by the Worms. That was the original Bug. Band.
Yeah. And then they got inspired by the Early Birds.
I believe so. I think so. But here's the deal. You were with the Electric Needlefish. You guys were very, very famous in your fifth grade.
Okay, I know you're being sarcastic, but we genuinely were more famous than I ever imagined possible.
Explain.
The fact that our final official time playing together was the final year of the Jam.
Yeah.
When we were in high school.
Yeah.
And everyone knew who we were.
Yeah.
Literally 6-7 years after the last time we did. I can't really say I've accomplished that much in life, but I've definitely done something that most people would only dream of.
Well, and
somehow, and yet, I am still the most famous for working at Lowe's. It's the only time. Lowe's is the only time I've ever been actually recognized on the street, just going on my regular day.
I know.
Twice.
And it's like, why would somebody even bring that up?
Of all the things.
It doesn't even make sense. Who cares?
Who recognizes their local hardware associate?
I've seen, there's a guy that works at the post office in Nolensville. And
Do you know his name?
I don't.
Already less famous than me.
Yes. I know he started a band, but it failed miserably. But here's the thing. I've seen him around town every now and again, shopping or something like that. And I go, oh, I know that guy. Oh, he works at the post. I've never thought, you know what I need to do? I need to go up and acknowledge, aren't you a post office worker? And have him just be enthralled by his fame and what he's accomplished. But you do notice them, and when you see them out of context, isn't that weird? You get used to a certain person doing a certain thing, and that's how you associate. There's a woman that works at the Delta Lounge in Nashville Airport that I've seen for many, many years because I would always go in there for years. So I've seen her, I've recognized her, she recognizes me because I've been going there for how many years. If I saw her suddenly walking around Costco, I'd be like, almost like they're a celebrity, like but they're out of context.
Yeah, I think the most common version of that is school teacher. Hey, my 8th grade science teacher, you exist outside the school? Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't think of that.
What do you think it is that makes someone, when they're seen first, let's say on video, like television or movies, and that's how you see them, and then you see them live, and it's almost like, what is it about that transfer from the digital image, whatever that would be called, the recorded image, to a three-dimensional live biological in my own space image, and it causes us to can't believe we're looking at them. What is that?
I think the simplest explanation is, it's much more common to see them on a screen than it is to see them in person.
Okay.
It's sort of like baseball cards. Like, maybe a card isn't worth that much, but it's a rare one. Basically, no one has it, so that ups the value.
Okay.
Not because of the value of it inherently. It's not something you see every day.
So we give them value because we like the movie they're in, and they're good.
Our value is based on our previous experiences with them, combined with the almost made myself deaf because you've turned me up and I was talking.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine. So it's a combination of the value that we associate with them normally, multiplied by the rarity of having seen them.
I think you're right. And did you know that, when I go to perform, even if I'm in a small church with just a small group of people, because I'm not famous, Wyatt. I mean,
you're not universally famous, but you have a niche sort of group, and you are famous in that group.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you that. Just like the electric needlefish. Has its niche.
But it does exist, which is, again, more than what we can see from most people.
I think you're absolutely right. And I do have a niche for it. But I don't like to be seen before the show. I just have this old school. I want to be sort of ushered in the back, into the green room. I don't want people to see me before the show. And it has nothing to do with ego. It has nothing to do with I'm too good to be seen. It's kind of like you need to see the performer in this particular type of
sort of like first impression. Like, you want the first impression to be your performance, not who you are, the guy, because the guy is more mundane than the performer.
Well, maybe, but you talked about if you see them suddenly real, it's so rare that it gives it a prestige.
Yeah.
So if you went to, so your favorite drummer was Neil Peart, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely, yes.
So you saw a couple Rush concerts and saw them live, right?
I saw the final one, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't you go to two, though? Two of their concerts?
Maybe. I only remember the one, but I know that I've been to a lot of them.
Clockwork Angel.
Clockwork Angels was the one I went to.
Yeah.
Maybe they had another one, but
I thought there was. I thought you went to another one with your mom.
I can't think of it.
Anyways, but when you saw them come out on stage, wasn't there a sense of, oh, there they are? It's really the guy that really makes that drum pattern on Tom Sawyer that I think is so cool.
Yeah, that's like, this is the dude. That's the kit. That's the kit that he literally has to be elevated from the floor because it surrounds him completely. I wish I had a kit like that.
Yes. So if before the show you were sitting there getting a Coke And he came walking up, sipping on a Coke. Hey, how are you? Yeah, I'm going to be doing a show here in a minute. What's your name? Oh, hey, good to meet you. Yeah, I just drove in. I don't know. My motorcycle's running a little low, but anyways, what's going on? I got to hit the restroom. I'll be right back. Can I get you something? You might be a bit in shock, and you might even be a little bit like enthralled, but it's like it takes the magic away.
It's like, oh, he's just a regular person.
Yeah, and I
he
want him,
just so happens to also be the greatest drummer of all
I
time.
want him to be. He's not the greatest drummer of all time, but he's a great.
Oh,
rock
name one who's better.
Buddy Rich.
Buddy Rich?
Okay. Unbelievable the things he could do.
You got lucky with that one.
That guy, I've watched, and I'm not a drummer. You are, so you would know better than me the technical difficulties, and nobody is denying Peart as a great drummer. But, I don't know that even Drum Magazine, if they always have the 100 best drummers, I don't even think they put him as number one, honestly. And that doesn't mean it's right. It's just somebody's opinion. But I watch Buddy Rich do crap. It's just, well, I'm not even the best gauge because I can't play drums. So I don't know a guy that can just keep time I'm fascinated by. Drummers watch this guy and go, I don't know how he does that. When you can't fathom it, it's like, I can't do that thing. You're in a special league. And there are prodigies. There are great pianists. And then there's Mozart. I mean, they're rare. And maybe Peart was like that. He was definitely a percussionist because he played lots of stuff, glockenspiel.
Yeah, anything that you can hit with a stick, he played it.
Yes, and then as a famous, locked-in, famous drummer with matched grip, he decided to learn traditional grip. And
he recorded an entire album in traditional grip.
From a jazz teacher. This dude went to a teacher to teach me how to... I mean, how hard is it to switch?
Well, it kind of depends on how used you are to the old way.
Okay.
The more you have that ingrained in your head, the harder it is to make the switch because instinctually you're like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
This is not what we've trained for.
Right.
Go back to normal.
But I don't even know how we got off on drums, but what the heck? Maybe it'll intrigue somebody. But it would seem like if you're like this, you have better control to get all over the place. Whereas you're like this.
Well,
how do you get up there and do that?
Well, okay, so I actually do have some experience with this, actually.
All right.
Because at church band, many of the songs that we play, they start out with me on side stick, which is where you use the side of the stick to hit the rim of the snare drum to get a sort of a more poppy, less heavy sound.
Okay.
But then on the second half, I switch over to actual snare drum.
All right.
It is very hard to make that switch with traditional grip. Oh, no, I mean a matched grip where it's like, what you're used to.
Yeah.
Traditional grip, where you have that stick in that weird position, is so much easier to make that switch because all you got to do is just turn your wrist 180 degrees and you're back to side stick.
Okay.
Then switch it back, you're back to snare drum.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that's clearly not the only time it's used for.
Yeah.
But I do understand why you would want to learn that instead of just using matched grip for everything.
It just feels like it would be slower, though. And my point...
It feels like it, but if you're good at it, it's honestly about as fast.
Well, Buddy Rich proved it because he was traditional.
In both cases, it's really just using your wrist.
Okay.
Even if you're switching out like how it looks, you're not really switching out what you're doing.
Okay. Well, anyways, so the point I was trying to get at to you, son, and trust me,
there was a point to this. I forgot.
And talk about a roundabout way to get to where I was trying to land.
Yes.
Was celebrity. And how, if there's one common denominator, certainly over this last election and the celebrity endorsements, but something that is so clearly inculcated in celebrity culture is they actually take themselves seriously. These people actually think because they make more money, and you tell me your thoughts on this. I think of all the jobs in humanity, all the jobs. I think acting at the highest level, the A-listers, right, is the most overpaid for the most unimportant product there is.
I think you're half right. It is absolutely the most overpaid job.
Okay.
As for whether it's unimportant, well, that's like, because acting is basically the modern day version of play performers. And honestly, ultimately, acting is just a way to explore reality in a certain mindset. It's what's a good way to explain this?
It's storytelling.
It's storytelling, yeah. It's storytelling, and storytelling is, I wouldn't say that's unimportant. It's maybe not the most important, but being able to view life through a different perspective and maybe get insight, I think that's pretty important. The problem is, most A-list actors are not the ones in those movies.
Yeah.
They are in massive explosion, gunshot, Extreme 7.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, cool. You know how to use a green screen in a computer.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You don't deserve $20 million for that.
Well, I just don't think they do. And don't get me wrong. I am a huge supporter of the arts and certainly believe in storytelling. Jesus, you ever heard of him?
Yeah. Pretty dang important storyteller, if
Yeah,
I gotta say so myself.
He had some amazing stories. And the stories he told were very simple, but so deep. We're still dissecting them 2,000 years later. And by the way, those stories literally changed the way society behaved.
Yeah, isn't there like a name for those sort of short stories for the more at the end?
Parable?
Parable, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, parable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you take just one instance, the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan is more than just a guy being nice to each other. He told that story at a time when the Romans found life very cheap. If you were killed or cast aside as a slave or a child or a woman, nobody cared. There was no human rights. There was a hierarchy of who was allowed the privilege to enslave and kill others, and nothing was going to happen to you. Greeks were very similar. They had the sense that certain people should be slaves. That's just the way the world works. So to come up with this idea that this person that's not related to you, that can't pay you back, that can't give you anything in return, that can't in any way enhance your life, but in fact you are sacrificing your life and your goods and your convenience for somebody else who is not even looks like you or of your ilk or of your ethnicity, even somebody that's despised often by your group of people, and to love that person for no other reason than they were in need, changed the world. People said that's a better way to be a human, that maybe there should be rights for children so they're not exploited. Maybe there should be equal rights for women so that they too aren't just treated as property. Maybe there should be rights even for people of other countries that move into your country. And that came from the idea originally of made in the image of God. That idea of monotheism, that one God, thus every human being literally has the same Father, literally means, I don't care what color, what shape, what size, what ethnicity, you are related to each other as creations of God. And so you're in the same family. And so it was crucial that those stories were told because they changed the world to this day. And people like the leftist wokists who just got destroyed in the American election a week ago, they think we want to care about the immigrants, we want to care about the downtrodden, the poor, and they think that this is just something good about themselves. We're intrinsically virtuous. We're the good guys. Matter of fact, we hate you and Donald Trump because he's a fascist and a Nazi. Now, he's not, but they call him that to feel good about themselves for being bigoted and hateful towards him. Remember, if this is an evil person, you're not being hateful towards them when you disparage them and malign them and their character, even when they didn't do the things you're claiming. You're not maligning them. You're giving them due process. You're putting them in the position they belong. You are basically enacting judge, jury, and justice upon them based on your perspective without having to introspect and make sure, what if you're wrong? What if you're the tyrant? What if you're the bigot? What if you're the close-minded? What if you're the fascist? What if you're the Nazi? What if you're the hateful? What if you're the phobic? What if you are the despicable one? What if you are deplorable? What if it's you, and yet everybody around you tells you how great you are, that you actually buy your own bio, which is what I was getting back with these actors. They think because they're given all this attention because they play a character, and by the way, that's what's so fascinating about actors. They play heroes. They play the guy that can beat everybody else up. They play the guy with all the right lines at just all the right times. And so we give them the sense of realism that that's really who you are. And you're not. You are a normal human being that's getting paid way too much money for doing something that, I'm sorry, there's 10,000 other people that could have done it just as well as you, but you got the lucky ring. So be grateful, especially if you're an American, that you get paid this much money for giving so little back to society. Am I going now hypocritical towards the idea of storytelling, how important it is? No. What I'm saying is somebody that truly is virtuous would be humble, grateful, and want to, in any way possible, connect to the people that pay money, that don't have close to any amount of money you have, to come see you. You should be so accessible to them because you don't deserve this. But they don't get that because they aren't Christ followers. And Christ followers understand that you are not better than anybody else. You are not superior than anybody else. That, in fact, if you've been given great gifts, then you will be expected to give much back. That's what the Bible teaches. To whom much is given, much will be expected. Wyatt, I have a clip of a little comedy routine that I did that is getting some big notice. Some of you, if you're fans, have seen this, but I just want to give you an idea, a little breath of fresh air before we go into this incredible interview with Carol Swain. Just something fun to laugh at and to think about as you chew on that last little monologue, rant. Let's laugh for a second. Wyatt, if you can, find the button and push it.
Right, big guy? He knows. He knows. That was a compliment. Big guy! It's a compliment. Big girl? Not so much. Not so much. Should be. But we got liberal ideologues in this country that have decided that you're not allowed to make descriptive terms of people. That's what always bothered me. Big girls should be a compliment too. You know why? Because some girls are big. Some people are made differently than others, and we should appreciate that, shouldn't we? But you're not allowed to say that. You can't say somebody's fat. Hurts their feelings. Why? When does the truth become offensive? I mean, if that was the only word and it was designed to be malicious, I'd understand. But it isn't. You can say other words. Big boned. Hefty. Full-figured. You know what full-figured, hefty, and big bone means? Fat! I'm not a liberal. I don't believe a country is better when you can't say somebody's fat. I'm a conservative. I believe a country is better when you don't think fat is less attractive than thin. That's what I believe in, when you appreciate every type of body because it's the way we were made. That's what I appreciate. Every magazine cover has a girl weighing 20 pounds. No wonder a fat girl feels weird. If you're fat, you're fat, man. That's all I'm saying. You should feel proud. I don't care how many vertical stripes you're wearing. We can tell. Inside every fat person, there's a thin one going, I'm hungry. You know, so be careful. It's not bad. It's culturally imposed. Middle Ages, fat girls were the babes. You see it in all their portraits. They would sit there and let you paint their picture. It took months. And they would lay on a couch, eating, naked. That is a healthy body image. It's culturally imposed. Well, you just can't say it because you're not fat. Yes, I can. You know why? I'm short. I am short. I'm 5'6". Do you understand, folks? That means I'm abnormal. If you say you're short, it's not slander, it's true. Short is the way I'm made. Never going to be tall. It's what it is. And this is where we've lost the concept of working towards something greater than ourselves. Again, the liberal ideology says, don't use the words, creating a delusional world where words alter reality. And it's not true. You see, you got two choices when somebody calls you what you are. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it drive you. I'm short, and I still was a starting shortstop in baseball, senior year in high school. I'm just short. They don't get nothing for being short. They assume tall guys are athletes. Hey, you're tall. You play basketball? What do I get? Hey, you're short. You a jockey? Or what do you do? What's the deal? Nothing. These fat people get to be jolly. Short people have a complex. Got a Napoleon complex. What are you talking about? I'd rather be fat than short. These fat people get to be Santa Claus. Elf. It's about ungratefulness. If I was fat, I would get down on my knees every day and thank God I live in a country that gives me the option of getting fat. It means I've got an overabundance of food. Other countries that are skinny ain't skinny because they don't like it. They don't got nothing to eat. Fat always means abundance. Fat wallet. Fat paycheck. Shortage.
You know, that was done in 2004, Wyatt, and I looked really sweaty.
It's the camera adds 10 pounds, and I'm assuming it's pounds of sweat.
It's moisture. Nobody told us that the pounds is moisture. No, I remember that. That was done at the Biloxi Theater in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I sweat like a pig anyways. And by the way,
I thought pigs couldn't sweat.
well, I did too, as it came out of my mouth. And
Next, they're going to tell me they can look up in the sky.
Are you talking about the turkeys that drown themselves when it rains?
No, pigs physically cannot look up into the sky.
How
They
so?
don't have the muscles for it.
What if they lay on their back?
I'm pretty sure then they drown like turkeys if it's raining.
Well, so you're saying that a pig's biology doesn't allow them to go?
Yeah, the anatomy just doesn't let them do it.
No kidding. And you know that turkey thing where they look up and drown? That's a lie, I guess. That's an urban legend.
Come on. You can't live on a planet where it rains constantly and be killed by rain. Like, that doesn't make sense.
No, you can't. But
No, you can't. Name one time that's ever happened.
a flood. It's a flash flood, and you get drowned.
No. Not the byproduct of the rain, the actual rain itself.
Acid rain, maybe.
I
burns
guess.
burns all the flesh off your skin. You're left as just a blob of internal organs exposed.
First of all, why would the internal organs somehow be more protected from the acid rain than the rest of you? Second of all, I think what they're saying nowadays is it's actually alkaline rain, which is basically the opposite. It's basic rain.
Isn't alkaline actually neutralize acid?
Yeah, it does, because it's so acid is anything lower than 7 on the pH scale, 7 being water, and basic is anything above 7.
So what is acid?
Acid, acid it has to do with ions. I believe it's hydrogen ions. And acid is something that has, I believe, a lack of hydrogen ions, but let me go double check.
Okay. And the ions burn you? Why? Why would they burn?
No, it's not that they themselves burn you. The lack of them lets it chemically react with organic matter.
Oh, interesting. Wyatt, you sound like a little nerd over there in your little box, your little booth.
Well, I haven't really had much of a
Life?
chance to.
Life?
You know what? Sure, why not?
Yeah. Listen, I got to tell you something. Well, Wyatt, every time I go to Lowe's, everybody's like, don't I know you? And it's odd. It's weird. And I always say, well, it's probably Brad's son has issues. And they said, no, didn't you used to work in paint? Anyways, I did want to say this to you, though. We're going to reveal you soon, I think, and here's why, folks. So when we started this podcast, if you're new to this podcast, and if you are new to this podcast, you can't leave. It's part of the rules, especially now that Donald Trump is president. It's now illegal for you not to watch my podcast. I don't know if you knew that, but that's one of his 10 steps to making America.
Is that this Project 25?
2025, yeah.
It
was actually called, originally Project 20, Brad Stine has issues at 25, and they said, too long, so they just removed that part. But, and of course, 2025 is coming up soon, and that's when this podcast will move into the new realm, the new feel, the new look. We'll probably have a new backdrop. We'll keep our little logo, but your mom wants to fix it up and make me look not like an idiot and a schizophrenic, so she's going to get involved.
As long as you still have issues.
I will have issues, that is a guarantee, but we're going to show Wyatt. He's going to have his own camera, so when we talk, you're going to get to see him, and the reason I'm doing that is, A, I just think it might make it more interesting in the dialogue when people get to see the guy, and B, I'm hoping that Wyatt will be with me as this ministry grows, and he can go with me, and he can sell merchandise, and he can help me do my live events, and maybe we were going to shoot some Brad's Son Has Issues at different locations that you can come and watch. So you're going to get to see him. So it's like we might as well get it over with and let people see him. The amount of women at that point that are going to be in line, please, Wyatt, pick me for the dance. Ask me out, and Wyatt's going to say what?
Do I know you?
Right, because you've got no
game.
Okay, but anyways, there'll be a woman out there that perhaps can break him out of his shell. And yes, that's part of the reason why we haven't shown him, is because he has a shell. So that's off-putting to a lot of humans.
Yeah, it looks very unnatural, even though the doctors assure me it is totally normal.
And nothing that can't be fixed with a little Vaseline and
a hammer and chisel.
Well, that's the thing that you used to get a good deal on, but now that you're not at Lowe's, who knows what it's going to cost us. But it's worth it for the big reveal, and that reveal is going to come soon on, we think, the 100th episode. So that's coming up very, very soon. So again, in kind of a wrap-up of a week later, it does appear we were able to vote, and it does appear that in this case, the Trump administration was prepared to defend themselves this time. It gives us a lot of hope for what he says he wants to do. We'll see if he can, or if he does. Time will tell. He's not my Savior. Christ is. But God uses people to try to do things. If he can do what he says he wants to do, it will make America great again. But I am not gloating. I'm not watching videos of all the people crying about he's going to lose, and then they eat it and scream and I'm not gloating. I am humbled. I'm grateful. I really thought that America was about to cross the Rubicon and never return and lose our freedoms once and for all. And I just cared about my son. I cared about my grandkids. I want them to have freedom. I want them to know it's so precious. It's so beautiful. And we still have it. And I want to keep it that way. So my whole entire ministry, Brad's Son Has Issues, is to grow, to draw people to Christ, because he's true. It's the thing that can give us a foundation, a moral foundation that can't be broken. And if we have that and the Holy Spirit inside of us, we'll make the right decisions. We'll do the right thing. We'll be ethical. We'll be good. We'll be helpful. We'll love the immigrant, but we'll want them to do it the right way. We will love people that have all different points of view, even those who despise us, as long as they do it with civility. Folks, if it happens, if God has given us grace, this can be an amazing 4 years that truly can show us finding some kind of continuity in America that's been lost for so long. It has to happen. We have to find America again. We have to be patriotic again. We have to love our nation again, all of us, and find what we have in common if we are going to survive. And somebody that's going to talk about that right now is somebody that I brought in. She wasn't really scheduled for this time, but she came in. I said, no, this is too good. This was right after the election when we interviewed her. So it's fresh. It's like 2 days after. She's an expert on critical race theory, an expert on the Marxist movement that's tried to destroy America. She is a warrior. She's a woman. She's black. She is a conservative, so she's taken heat from all sides. And she stood strong as a warrior to say, I must speak truth. A big fan of Donald Trump. And, he's had her and participated in some of his cabinet. So, and in his administration at times to talk and to give some insight. So she is really an interesting person. Somebody should know, somebody should watch. And the books that she's done and the ones that are coming up, we'll be talking about that. But folks, this is somebody that really has a great insight that you're going to love. And just again, 2 days after the election, as on the aftermath, on the kind of, let's kind of take some kind of observation about what just took place and what does it mean going forward. And what does it mean to be men and women and black and white and trying to love each other, especially as Christians, but also as an American. And of course, because America was built on a Christian moral ethic, it does matter that it is part and parcel of the fabric of America. So this is a very, very special guest. Thank you, all of you who show up every Monday. You know who you are. Again, if we can get a time when we can do live again and I can interact, we'll try that. But right now, we're just trying to make this so good and so positive that it can grow. Folks, you can see me on Spotify, on Apple Tunes, and on Brad Stine Has Issues. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification button. It'll help me build this YouTube channel. Rate it, do all the things. Let's get up to 100,000 subscribers in this next year. It'll make it profitable. It'll allow us to grow. And I want to do extra special videos that could actually go out and help inspire the world. Can't do it without some help financially. So pray for me, pray for Wyatt, and for this podcast. Thank you for showing up. I got some amazing guests coming up. I've already interviewed and some in the works. I promise you, you're going to love what's coming. In the meantime, this is the post-election celebration and gratefulness for God's grace and this little moment of window of him watching and saying to you, Christ followers, are you ready to become disciples and get all in and be deeply and vigilantly unapologetic about your faith in the marketplace so we can inundate this nation again with the Spirit of God. This is going to be necessary. And we're going to do that with like-minded folks. One of them you're about to see. Please welcome and enjoy this interview with Carol Swain. She is a Christ follower. She's a conservative, and I am lucky enough to call my friend. Please welcome Carol Swain back to Brad Stine Has Issues. Hi, Carol.
Hey, it's so great to be here again.
Well, I am so honored to have you. I really am. Everybody has to say those platitudes, right? There's sort of a decorum when people have interviews. Great to have. It's kind of like verbal handshakes that we do. But, in this case, you and I have known each other for quite a few years. I still remember the first time I met you. Do you remember when you met me?
No.
Okay. You don't have to. It's not a trick question. You meet a lot more important people than me.
Context. Did I say something embarrassing?
You said something very kind, actually, and you were the one that instigated the conversation. So I was doing comedy, but also hosting conference at the Southern Evangelical Seminary about, 5 or 6, 7 years ago.
I do remember that.
And I
felt like a fish out of water in that crowd.
Why? You're so smart and so...
Not because of my intellect.
Yeah.
I just didn't fit in.
How so?
Well, we won't hang out there. Go on. So what did I say to you?
Well, okay. I didn't know we were going into treacherous ground there. So I was performing some comedy, and they've had me on twice. They brought me in twice, and honestly, Carol, they gave me one of the nicest compliments of my life. Is that they said, we wanted to, because there's a lot of academics and theologians and so forth, and doctorates and whatnot, and
You mean eggheads?
eggheads,
Right.
and that can be interesting. I enjoy deep philosophical
Do
conversations.
you know what I enjoy?
What?
Just communicating at a level of regular people.
Yes.
And not trying to impress and trying to make sure that people know that you're important.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I didn't fit in.
Maybe. I mean, that very much can be. When you get around intellectuals, they have a particular nomenclature as to how they engage with each other, because that's what they're supposed to be. They're academics. They have professor in front of their name, so they have a sense of, I got to earn this money that they pay me, so I got to sound smart. Maybe, I don't know.
I prefer, just being yourself and
Yeah.
not going overly bored trying to impress your audience. But we digress.
It's not a big convoluted story, but I had performed and I had finished, and I guess I came, maybe they were taking a break, I don't know. But you came up and introduced yourself. I didn't know you at that point, and you just simply said, I'm trying to remember, because it's been maybe 10 years ago, but something to the effect of, I'm a professor at Vanderbilt, or perhaps you had just left. It was in that time frame.
It was a lot longer than 10 years ago.
Oh, was it?
I believe.
Okay. Well, I know that
So
you
I complimented your comedy, right?
you did, but you
Okay.
did. Thank you. And I wasn't fishing for compliments. I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah, I don't go up to people unless I have something to say.
Well, you did. And you said, you told me that you were there because you just want to acquire as much information as you can in all stratospheres, because you're trying to be a communicator, you're trying to help people, you want to be educated, and even someone of your stature, and you're a professor, a doctor.
Right now, I remember, because at one time I thought maybe God was going to call me into the ministry, and so
Okay.
I attended that seminary
Yeah.
to get a deeper understanding
Yeah.
of some of the theological issues.
Right.
So that would make sense as to why. I was
But that tells you about your character, because you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. You wanted to find out, is God, if you're doing this for me, let me go see what this world entails. Does this make a match for me? Because it's hard, isn't it? I mean, and just to complete that, so you don't feel like I'm leaving you hanging, it was just very kind, and you complimented me on my comedy, but you told me what you were doing and who you were, and the more I understood.
Back then, I was nobody.
Well, you were somebody that I listened to. Be a professor at a major university isn't easy to do.
Right. And, Vanderbilt, I was tenured early at Princeton.
Whoa.
And part of my story, too, that maybe we talked about last time, is that I was a high school dropout,
Yeah.
one of 12 children. And so, God has taken me so many places.
Yeah.
And I would say that I ended up with a ministry, but there was something about your presentation, obviously, that struck a chord. Maybe you're the only person I felt comfortable with, the comedian.
I would say this, Carol, and this is true, and I've said this on many occasions. Historically, the comedians were the ones that could make fun of the king and not get their head cut off.
Oh, that's right. You were really talking to the culture.
Yes.
You were just stepping on areas where some people would have been afraid to tread at that time. So I'm sure that was why I went up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, listen, that would be the greatest compliment I could have, Carol, is to be courageous. If there could be the most insulting characteristic a human could have, it's cowardice. I don't think there's anything worse than that. And I'll give you an example, because we're about to go into what we need to talk about and what you hear, because we've had a monumental situation that just happened in the United States of America that's going to have repercussions for a long time. But it also means a battle's about to ensue that maybe we don't even realize.
Well, Brad, it may mean something that you haven't thought of.
Please.
And that is the election returns. Donald Trump's landslide.
Indeed.
And what is being said as Kamala Harris's failure to perform. The argument that she underperformed Biden. Did she really underperform Biden? Or is this evidence that we have been looking for, that there was funny business taking place in 2020? 15 million Democrat voters have just disappeared. And so you've heard the joke that some comedians are saying, did the rapture occur and we missed
Right.
it?
Well, it's a great joke, but we know it can't be true because clearly no
they would've
Democrats
never
are going to
taken
heaven. Exactly. We know they would have been left behind. That's for sure.
Right. It's,
But it is. I mean, when you look at the statistical voting records at that time in the last 10, 20 years, they're fairly consistent.
Yes.
And except for that one.
What an anomaly. Have
Anomaly.
you seen the chart? And
Yeah.
so it's pretty clear that we may have discovered the smoking gun. And us election questioners, I call
Deniers,
myself an election questioner,
Yeah.
but other people called me and others who ask questions election deniers.
Yeah.
And I was harmed in a lot of ways. There was a university job where I understand that one of the things used against me was that I was an election denier. I did a podcast, with Glenn Lowry and that John McWhorter, and apparently they mocked me for
Really?
being an election denier. And I was told that no sane person believed that the 2020 election was stolen. I never backed down.
No, you're courageous on so many levels. I even said that in my intro, and it's sad that we have to differentiate elements of a human being that are specific so that because it does seem to isolate us and keep us from being just one. We're Christ followers. We have the one true God. That makes us literally brothers and sisters. There's never been a belief system until the monotheistic belief system brought into play that we're all made in God's image and we're all from the same God. That literally means we're all related. There's no other way to say it.
Right.
We got one Father. There's no other way to do that. So that was unique. It's what made us one as humans, including if you were handicapped. It doesn't matter. You're just as valuable as someone who's not, including if your skin is darker or lighter, including if you're a woman or a man, including if you're a child or an adult, including if you're rich or poor, including if you're a slave or free. You're all equal under God's sight. And then how we treat those of differences will be a reflection of how much we believe that God demands us to be humble in his sight and treat each other as fellow travelers on this earth. So that uniqueness does make us one, but we can't escape the fact, Carol, that they want to isolate us. They want to find differences to somehow keep us in separate camps. You are darker complected. And we can say black, Negro. We can do all the games that have always been played as just a way to describe people. It's kind of like somebody's thin or fat or tall.
Right.
And there are differences.
Right. And when we say they, we can identify the they as people who are steeped in Marxist theory.
Amen.
And Marxism is rooted in conflict. And so you have to pit groups against one another. And somehow it has become the main strategy of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
And so they see themselves as a big tent, but to be able to exist, it seems there has to be conflict.
Right.
And
conformity.
their own.
Conformity to their philosophy. Anything outside of that is where you get the pejoratives.
But there are some Republicans that engage in the same thing. And so it can be a societal problem.
Yeah.
And we find that one of the Marxist strategies is deception and infiltration. So most organizations, whether it's the church or the Republican Party, name the organization, they have been infiltrated with people steeped in Marxist theory.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit vulnerable right now, and I hope it gives us it moves us into an interesting dialogue here. Humans are different. We are. If you come from a rich family, you are going to see the world differently than if you come from a poor family. If you come from, in the United States, if you come from an African background, your people were here as slaves is how they immigrated. Right. So that's a different history than mine. If you are royalty, you have a different perspective or whatever. So we do have differences. And it seems like, especially as Christ followers, our mandate is to ignore the superficial differences and find the continuity of our souls, that we're made in the image of God and that we should seek his mandates, his laws to rule our lives. Yes, and that's what it means to be crucified, to be slaves to Christ, to God. So It's easy, though, to try to find differences so that we can find ways to not have to do the hard work, which is look at ourselves and say, where am I falling short or whatever? And so I'm a big advocate of Israel. A big advocate of Israel. I do believe, man, I don't know if this makes me a Zionist, but I do believe that God gave that land to
Well, I
them.
agree. And if you're a Zionist, I am also. And I would argue that God is a God of diversity and that diversity itself was meant to be positive. If you look at the universe, there's so much diversity in every species.
Right.
And so that was never meant to be a negative. It only becomes a negative when men with agendas find ways to exploit it for their political or gain or
Yes.
financial gain. And so that is part of what has happened in our society.
Right. Here's what I'm discovering about myself is it's a discipline to be kind. It's a different discipline to be loving. It's a discipline to people who are different or
Well, I
disagree.
mean, that's true. I'm on social media and there's so many clever things I come up with that I would love to say, but as a Christ follower, I temper my tone.
Yeah.
Every now and then, I just
Well, you don't have to do it with me, but
no, but I'm saying
yeah.
because I want to be kind, but I also want to challenge that person. My goal is to get people to think.
Yeah.
And so I try to do it in a way that isn't a direct attack.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes people are stupid or
Yeah,
ignorant.
that's
And
true.
sometimes, if they keep on pushing their opinion, they need to be informed.
Yeah.
And when I do try to inform people, I will often post the data to back up what I'm saying. It's not just my opinion. We do have to meet a higher standard,
Yeah.
but truth should never be compromised.
Ever. God bless. No, that's true. Well, listen, you have a countenance, though, as long as I've known you. It's very kind, very gentle. I'd almost want to say meek, but all of those make me sound like that you're weak, and I don't. And that's not anywhere in the data.
People fear me. People love me, and people fear me.
Well, they should, because you. And here's where I guess where I was going with this question, but it's important, is that you check boxes. If you were a Marxist, that would give you plenty of privilege and power.
I get treated like an older white man. No, literally, really. And
What does that mean?
it means that I don't get any of the traditional privileges that would go along with me being a black woman who's overcome poverty, that's been very successful, and I've lived, I mean, I started in the lower class, I've lived middle class, whatever tier I'm in now. I've just seen America from different vantage points, and unlike many of the people that I encountered in academia, I had real jobs. I really did work in fast food.
Yeah. Well, and you
for
are,
half a day.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't take long to realize I don't think this is going to be my career choice.
But I worked in a garment factory. I sold things from door to door. I've been a sales clerk. I can a nursing home, cleaning up, cleaning dead bodies and cleaning people up after they have, a body malfunctions.
Wow.
And so I've had all these experiences, and so I think I really understand America.
To the progressive left.
But we really need to talk about this election.
Well, we're going to. We're getting there, but it's always good to set a foundation as to how we see the world, so people understand for how we philosophically. What is our presupposition? How do we see things when we move forward, so they understand our angle, our point of view? Because it's different to be a Christian than to be a Marxist.
Right.
It makes us see things differently. Same data.
I feel like people do too much apologizing. Like if I'm talking with a white man or someone, or male in general, oh, but I cannot possibly know what it's like to be a woman. There are some things that are true or false, and you don't have to be the same group membership to speak that truth. And, like a white person, if you see a black person engaging in racism or doing things that don't meet the standard that we've set for ourselves as human beings, to apologize and say, to qualify your statement with, I couldn't possibly know what it's like to be a descendant of slaves before you speak, I think that is not necessary and that it undercuts your remarks.
I agree. And I think it's also, honestly, it's infantilizing the minority.
But
Because
progressives do that all the time.
it's
I mean,
it's turning you. If I was a black man, I would feel so offended by being treated like I was a child.
well, they were treated like a child. They were told that they should be supporting Kamala Harris, and I believe 80% of black men did. 20%
Well, you know,
didn't.
let's just jump in then, because if we're heading that way, I did a quick research because I was curious about this. This happened to be just in Texas for some data, but it's telling. So, and I'm old enough to have to wear glasses.
Okay.
Mind?
I
if
have
do
some
that?
over here.
I don't want to
Just
look.
not reading.
I look like that older white man that you're normally treated to be. So I actually have a lived
No, I
experience.
mean the real older white man, the ones in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, okay. Well, I have lived experience to be an older white man, so you can trust me when I say what it's like. I can't see. One of the things about this was Texas that just came out in the exit polls, but I want to get your thoughts on this. So one thing for sure that it was fascinating about this and what helped this landslide from is minority votes that he got. It was
I know.
ridiculous what happened.
They could identify with him because of the way he was treated. It was so unfair on all dimensions.
Well, okay, black men in Texas, okay, back in 2020 with Biden, 15% voted for Trump. 34% this time, almost doubled. Latino men, 38% for Trump back with Biden. 53% of Latino men in Texas, where the border is being overrun, and you'd think they would be maybe, or we could caricature them as being, well, they're going to be supportive of all these Hispanics coming over the border because they're my people. No, they don't like it.
I'm sorry, the white progressives say that those men had a problem with women. That they were just
Well,
sexist.
there's a problem with that because 36% of Latino women voted for Trump in 2020. 48% now voted for him this time. So 18 to 29-year-olds.
Black women, I think that went up, but maybe not as much.
It didn't go up as much. I didn't write that one down, I don't think. 18 to 29-year-olds, 35% for Trump in 2020, 51%. Males in general went from 33% for Trump in 2020 to 60% of men saying, we're not putting up with this crazy anymore. We're going to rise up as a constitutional republic. We're the government, not you. You represent me. You have to end this crazy and bring us back to a constitutional republic. And but talk to me. And again, I'm not trying to pigeonhole you. You made it very clear we shouldn't have to differentiate between our races or whatever as Americans or as Christians. It's true, but it does have a factor that has ramifications. And I do believe that you're going to understand elements about the black community, whatever that is, that I'm not going to have because I'm not part of a cultural milieu like that.
There are all kinds of black Americans. Some of them have never even had the black experience. And
What
if you
is
look at
the- what is-
Kamala Harris and
Yeah.
Barack Obama, they were not traditional. They were not the black descendants of slaves.
Right.
Kamala Harris never had the black American experience.
Something happened, and you already broached it, so let's go a little bit deeper. You're saying to me that you believe the renaissance of black males in America who have at least in the inner city, a horrific life. I mean, these people are being murdered. It's almost a genocide of what's happening in the inner city, black.
And it's treated as if that's acceptable. That's not news when we find out that 20 people got shot in Chicago over the weekend or 30 people.
But what is making, you said it, but let's go deeper.
Here's what I believe.
Why are black men voting for Trump?
Black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, Americans care about the same bread and butter issues when it comes to jobs, inflation,
Yeah.
housing, the effects of illegal immigration on their way of life.
Yeah.
So Trump was the only one who was speaking to the concerns that real Americans had about how much they were paying for gas at the gas pumps, how much they were paying when Trump left office, what we're paying today. So I think that Republicans and Trump, that they treat people with respect, that they spoke to the American concerns in a way that blacks and Hispanics and these various groups that we felt included.
Proof to your point that humans kind of just all want the same thing.
I do. I've
Somebody's-
always believed
yeah,
that.
if I don't care who you
there
are.
would not be a race problem in America if there were not people that benefit from keeping the conflict going,
including blacks. There's black.
We've always had blacks that
sellouts. To me, they're the Uncle Toms. If we're going to use
they're used by progressive whites. They're used by progressive whites, and they are handsomely rewarded for that. And I'm told as a conservative, I'm making all this money and I'm a sellout and all of that. The money is on the side of the progressive left. The prizes, the awards. It's laughable, some of the people who have gotten the MacArthur Genius Award, who have gotten it because they're progressive, saying what the whites want to hear.
Right.
That sounds racist, doesn't it? When I say that they were saying what the whites wanted.
Well, no.
Progressives.
Well, listen.
Use blacks.
We have part of Marxist theory that has evolved into critical race theory, which was different than just critical legal theory, which started with critical theory in the Frankfurt School. So it's just part of this giant monster of cancer, and it's just getting different ways of destroying.
I don't have an answer to this question. Like, there's some movement away from the Democratic Party, but what will it take to get Black America away from the Democrats? Because I think the Democrats, what they have been pushing that is poisonous, that is killing Black America through the abortion, that in some places is almost genocidal.
Yeah.
When it comes to the fact that this black on black crime, most of the people who are being killed in the inner city are being killed by people who look like them. That's not something that is being addressed. And when we hear about these fights in stores and we see looters, we all know that they're going to be black. 95%
or if somebody
of the time.
if a white person is killed, or anyone's killed, and they don't mention the color or the race of the perpetrator, it's because it's always a person of color. They'll tell you if it's a white person.
But here's the thing.
So you're right. That's a racist element of keeping us
But I want to talk about that because some of the things that's taking place in the Black community that's wrong, that needs to be addressed, it can only be addressed when you actually directly call out that behavior as outside the norm, outside the mainstream, something that's hurting Black America, something that's hurting all Americans, something that needs to be addressed. But I would say in both political parties, they sugarcoat everything. They don't want to hurt people's feelings, but it is true that you can sort of, read the newspaper and predict which group was involved in these types of behavior. And then you find regular white people or regular people being called racist for behavior that is really behavior that you would take in a situation where you have certain facts.
Well, I had never heard, when I was performing comedy.
Like if you were making a decision about Memphis and you decide that you didn't want to go to the Black area of Memphis, are you a racist or are you somebody that's trying to preserve your life?
Well, I asked a police officer many years ago on a podcast. I said, here's where I'm confused a little bit. If my job, if you're a policeman, every day you go to work, you might die because you are always going to meet people in the worst case scenario. Been a traffic stop, there's been a crime, somebody's on the run, there's a domestic dispute. Every scenario, you're watching humans at the worst case scenario of their life for the most part. So it's dangerous. If your life is at stake every time you, just like in military, every time you step outside, somebody might literally kill me. You have to be hypersensitive. You have to say, what are the red flags? What do I need to look out for so I can protect myself and go home tonight? And if the scenarios that you come up with that deal with aggressive interactions and or violent interactions, if for the most part from your actual lived experience, if we're going to use one of their buzzwords, it's usually, if I'm a white guy and I'm in a inner city route, and that's usually who's trying to kill me is somebody of a certain color or age, oftentimes younger, why wouldn't I be going, okay, I got to be a little extra vigilant here because these are the people that keep shooting. I mean, that's not profiling. That's just using your intelligence to learn.
The statistics actually back up that as being rational behavior.
Yes. But rational behavior is white now. It's racist now. Math is race. Logic is racist.
And
I don't know what you do with it.
The Black community.
Well, it's destroying humanity. When I can't have a conversation because it's inherently racist, if it makes somebody feel less educated or having to take responsibility for their own actions. So we're not going to do that because they've already suffered enough. You're killing people. You're killing their ability to incentivize themselves to move out of this scenario and actually live better. But it's not an easy fix. I can't fix, I guarantee you there's plenty of white lower class communities that are killing each other too, or what. I can't fix those people.
But I believe that we could make some progress
How do we do it?
helping people by telling them the truth, not making them seem
And they
like,
resent it.
well, I don't think it's been tried really. That when it was more acceptable to be honest about behaviors, what was acceptable, that you saw people coming out of those communities changing their lives and they knew how to do it. But if you're told that it's someone else's fault and it's not your fault, that you can blame another group, incentivizes the things that you could do for yourself. And I look back at my own story, my own success. I had no one telling me that because of the color of my skin, there was this long list of things that I couldn't do because of white racism. We tell young minorities that today all the time. Like they're not told if you work hard, you get an education, you can make something of yourself. They're told that someone else is supposed to give them something or make something out of them. The government can't make something out of you. There are values that need to be changed within minority communities, and it's related to the culture. And you find successful blacks, they will say things to underclass or poor blacks that they themselves don't actually practice. Like if you go to, yeah.
Well, but here's the problem, though. Again, this is your expertise. Is that you are an absolute perfect example of what you just stated. It's not a theory. You're not teaching something out of a textbook in some university, but never had to actually prove its worth. And this is what's happened with a lot of tenured professors. They teach Marxism or socialism because it doesn't cost them anything. They've never built a business. They've never taken a risk. They've never had to pay the price for being wrong. They just throw out theories and then go home and get their paycheck because they're tenured. You lived a life that is indisputable. I was poor. I had 12 kids in my family. You probably suffered.
Right.
You probably didn't get a lot of food. You probably had to wear the same clothes.
Well, I never had much of a childhood. And I had my first real birthday party when I was in my 40s.
Wow. So, and I'm not feeling sorry for you. You have the dignity to say, I'm not asking you to feel sorry for it. I did it.
Right.
But if you are the perfect person to walk into any community of the disenfranchised,
Well,
or
the progressives keep me away from
people
who come from
or
backgrounds like
they
mine.
discount your experience as somehow an anomaly, I guess.
Yeah, the exception that proves the rule.
Well, I don't know what else they would say. You have the perfect ability to go into to let's say a 16-year-old black girl in the inner city
But
and
you know
help
something?
her.
God really ordered my life in this way. When I was in graduate school and undergrad, I never got steeped in Marxism. That was not an interest of mine. I was interested in Congress. And had I fallen into the clutches of progressive professors, it might have turned out differently. And so for some reason, the professors that I gravitated towards, they tend to have been more conservative, and that may have influenced, me. I was a Democrat, but I never saw the world quite the way other people did. I was sort of insulated and protected from ideas that kept me from becoming like many other black scholars who have been to the places where I have, like being on the faculty of Princeton and Vanderbilt.
But that's rare. I mean, was this in
rare.
the 60s and the 70s maybe?
I went to college in the 80s.
80s.
Yeah.
So I would think that was kind of the beginning. I mean, there's always been
It was
the left.
there, but I'm saying that for some reason it was not something that I was that interested in. I knew about it. I didn't realize how it was actually impacting my life even then. And once the Obama administration gained power, and I saw things changing around the nation and also on college and university campuses, that caught my attention, but it was really Curtis Bowers' film with Grinding Down America.
I didn't see that one.
You should see that film.
Grinding Down America.
And that film caused me to study Marxism and start teaching about the impact of communism on American political thought. Up until that time, I didn't realize how much it was influencing America and its politicians. And what I know today is that they always had a strategy and they played the long game.
Yeah.
And in the 1960s, when they were, I guess I would say more violent than they are today, that Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals was very helpful in teaching them how to strategize, how to go inside the institutions, keep their heads down until they gained a critical mass, and then take over the institutions. And they've taken over most of the institutions of America, and certainly our governmental institutions, which gets us back to the presidential election.
Right.
Because with Donald J. Trump's landslide election, he has an opportunity to really root out some of the problems in our governmental agencies. And we do need civil service reform, because many of the ones who undermined his first administration and who have always prevented real change from taking place are the career civil servants. They stay there regardless of the presidential administration, and they can undermine. They're not really controllable, but they need to be controllable.
Well, one of the first institutions that
and held accountable for the things that they've done.
Held accountable. That's what I'm saying. That's what I meant by the tenured professor remark earlier. If you can theorize an idea that people will take and run with and actually try to put into culture in real time, which is what happened, and all this crazy wokey stuff left the institutions as a theory, and they actually got turned into DEI. So now we actually have people using this theory to hire.
Let me tell you about DEI. I did some research, and apparently the concept diversity inclusion, I believe it was used for the first time in the 80s, and it was a white
I'm sure it's
speaker,
a white person.
man.
It's a man. That's
white man.
Usually it's a white woman.
And then later, the equity part was also added by a white man. And so some of the worst ideas in our society have come, I'm sorry, Brad, from white men that were misguided.
Oh, you don't have to convince me. Though it seems
so they've used women and blacks.
Though it does seem like white progressive women have taken that banner and have run with it, because they seem to be the biggest problem now.
I mean, they've taken it and put their own twist to it. But if you look at the exit data, I believe the majority of women, including the educated white women that seem to all have been lining up behind Kamala, for the most part, women did not vote for her at the levels that were expected because she was a woman. They voted based on those bread and butter issues that were affecting their families,
of course,
I would argue.
Well, I don't think I should have to apologize or prove my lack of racist tendencies, and of course, in their world of CRT.
Well, there's a reason why they say, birds of feather flock together, and, people tend to gravitate towards their own group. And so that's just a part of human nature.
Of course.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that until you use it the way that progressives use it to divide people and to harm others.
I agree with you 100%, because I've even said this about, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I've even said this about Christian denominations. Sometimes people think that's a problem, and I say, I don't think it's a problem, because I think in some ways denominations might have different, for example, if you go to if I went to a black church and a white church, they're different. The way they're
sing, very different. I've been to all of them, and at the black church, you're going to be there a little bit longer in those cases.
A little bit longer. Going to be a lot more dancing. Going to be a lot more.
A lot more music.
A lot more music, and that's beautiful. But here's the thing, Carol.
That doesn't mean racism, like they used to say, because the churches, that's the most segregated Sunday, the most segregated day of the week. And it's because people choose, the style of music and how long they want to be in church. And
I agree.
I'm a Southern Baptist, and if it's more than an hour, people start looking at their watches.
I agree, and that was the exact point that I made about that. is that if I don't like a certain type of like I don't like polka music. Okay, that doesn't mean they're bad people, doesn't mean they're not wonderful musicians. I don't happen to like that type of music. It doesn't interest me, it doesn't move me. I don't want to participate in it. You're into polka, you're going to have to go find it. You're going to have to do polka. Okay? I don't. So does that make me somehow a bigot? No, it means I have a subjective point of view.
But I mean, we used to have freedom,
Of course.
and we could choose how we wanted to spend our time,
Yes.
and with whom.
Well, when you talked about the segregated day of Sunday, and I think Martin Luther King was famous for saying that term, that's true. And there certainly was a time in America where Black Americans were not allowed into certain spaces. That's real. That's Jim Crow. We all know that was part of it. That was wrong. We got rid of that. But by the same token, like you said, if I went to a black church and people say, why don't the white people come here? And then I could come into my white church and say, why don't black people come? And I feel like you go where you're comfortable. If I happen to like this music, I'm going here. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. That doesn't make me racist. It means I have a taste that's different than yours.
I do have an anecdote I'd like to share.
Please.
Maybe about, this probably was 5 or 10 years ago, in another city. I went to a white church with a friend. I was going to meet her there. But when I walked through the door, the greeters came up to me and said, "May I help you?" And I said, "Yes, where's the restroom?" And after that, show me the sanctuary.
So, well,
I thought that was kind of odd to
that's
come up to someone and say, "May I help you?" on a Sunday morning.
Oh, that's funny.
But I told her how she could help me.
And she seems
And she did.
She did help. Well, there you have it. Moving forward, though, if we now see a large swath of black men who have said, "I resonate with this white guy, this old rich white guy." I don't know anything about the world of Donald
I think
Trump.
men are men, and that there are issues that for some of the men that have chosen to support Donald Trump is because they saw how lawfare was used against him, and how women could come forward that, he may never have met them in their lives and say, 25 years ago, I was walking across the street and he slapped me on the behind, and I was, traumatized, but right now I'm coming forward to say that he assaulted me.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I mean, how can men protect themselves? Because I think the standards associated with the Me Too movement, the Democrat strategy, they have used women strategically to go after men that they want to take down. And it didn't stay with women coming forward against men in the Republican Party. They also go after members of their own party selectively, depending on whether or not that person runs afoul. We can look at Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, who was in great standing until he criticized the Biden administration's immigration policies. And then all of a sudden, he's...
welcome to the lawfare.
Right.
But Carol, and I don't want to belabor this point, but I mean, since we're discussing the demographic of what it means to move forward as an America and trying to find unity, finding unity isn't hard when everybody looks the same and thinks the same. That's not hard to do because we already are in unity. The hard part of unity is finding an ultimate goal that we're all trying to get to, realizing we have different life experiences, different ways of seeing
I
things.
think we can overthink that. And I believe if we just moved ahead and just did our thing, people would sort themselves out into whichever groups they want to be in.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to overthink this person is black, this person is
No, I don't mean
Hispanic.
that. What I mean is we need an overarching goal that we all agree to. What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be part of
those
this?
are American ideals. Just go back and teach people America's history and the things that we once understood.
Not the 1619 Project?
And took for granted, not the 1619
See,
project.
they're faking history now. This is the problem. There is an enemy.
But I mean,
There's
is
an
a
enemy.
way to address it, and I think that let's just, be real. The only thing that will help America is another great awakening.
Amen.
Some type of spiritual revival. Donald J. Trump, elected in a landslide. There is no human solution to America's problems. And what I would want Christians to continue doing is to continue to pray for our nation, pray for our leaders. And I've been really praying for Joe Biden and this transition, because one of the things I would expect to happen in some of those corrupt agencies is that they would try to destroy all the evidence of their wrongdoing. Someone needs to be in charge to make sure that there are
consequences.
Well, not just consequences, but is the word, would it be guardrails? Some type of mechanism so that the people at DOJ or NIH or FDA, that they just can't go in and destroy the records for the next administration.
It's probably already happening as we speak.
I know, but I mean, I'm praying about it, and I think we all should be praying about it, that they would not be able to do that. And when it comes to the transition to the next administration, it's been mentioned that President Biden has invited President Trump to come to the White House and have a conversation. There's a lot of speculation. Maybe it involves a pardon.
Is Biden going to be there?
Biden did the invitation, so I think so.
But if he was there, there'll be no conversation. You understand?
Well,
he's not somebody you can have a conversation with, if you haven't noticed.
You know, that's how we talk about him, and that's how we stereotype him, and he clearly has cognitive issues.
Clearly.
But
Carol.
wait. Hear me out.
Okay.
I'm speaking.
Okay, I'm sorry. I defer to your to your lived experience.
There may be more of him left than we know, because there's speculation that some of the things that he did in the last few weeks that undermined Kamala, that these were intentional acts, and that probably when he went in to vote in Delaware, that he voted for Trump. Now, I don't know whether he did.
Didn't his wife come walking out of the polls with wearing a red suit? I saw that. It was all red. It was an all red pantsuit. Like
I did not see that.
Oh yeah.
But
unless it was an AI generated thing, but that's.
I would say that Joe Biden was treated badly by the Democrats, even if the election was stolen. I mean, and he was installed. You know, that they chose someone that should not have been put in that position. He campaigned from his basement. He was elected, but think about the institution of the presidency. If they can oust a president the way that Joe Biden was sort of pushed aside without using the 25th Amendment, because the proper way to do what seems to have taken place would have been through the 25th Amendment. But I guess no one really wanted Kamala to have that kind of power, even if it was for a few months. I think that the conversation with Trump, if there's enough of Biden left, and I believe there could be, it could actually help the institution of the presidency, because they need to clear out the deep state dwellers.
But Biden would participate in that? I mean, he used them.
Why wouldn't he?
Because he used them to wreak havoc on this nation for 4 years.
Yeah, but he is leaving the White House. There's not a lot left in him. And sometimes when people get older, the only way that you could actually get the kind of information that's needed to change things in Washington, you would have to have some cooperation from the other side. And so, you know, maybe this sounds obviously bizarre even to you, this meeting that Biden and Trump are supposed to have at the White House, Biden probably has the ability to stop those agencies from destroying records. And you know, maybe he would have an incentive to do that. Maybe. If he cared about the institution of the presidency.
Or he just wants to get his son...
or revenge.
Yeah, maybe. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, but I mean, I think the reason I shared this is that I believe we need to be praying about the transition.
Okay.
Praying for President Biden's to be able to do the things that need to be done, and also praying for his, you know, salvation if you think he's lost. Yeah. But just pray for this transition.
Yeah.
Pray for both presidents and both men.
Well, I agree with you. I've been praying for the political sphere for many years about a great awakening, a third great awakening. It's our only shot. It has to be a moral change based on the foundation of this nation, which was a Judeo-Christian nation. It believed in the Bible, in the holy sacred book that told us how the world's supposed to work and what is expected of us as humans.
And there's something else to pray for, that with President Trump, like, it's great when he says, I wouldn't be here because of God, and God has a special purpose for me. Pray that he really gets to know God.
Amen.
That he has a relationship. where he
Did
can
you
be
ever
led
meet
by the
him?
Holy Spirit. I've met him. I have my Trump stories,
Do
and
you think he's a believer? I know
I
he's grateful for the believers around
I
him.
hope that he is becoming a devout believer. I believe that God chose him and installed him, and that God loves him in a sense. And when I say God loves him, he loves me, he loves you. But I'm saying I believe God loves him the way he would love a David, because there's something very genuine about President Trump, almost like an innocence. Like, these mean things he says, they have a lot of truth in them. He just says it. He
Yeah.
says things. And one reason why so many people in America, I believe, voted for him is that he's a truth speaker.
Yeah.
And we are in a society where you're not allowed to speak truth. And I believe that President Trump could be great. He could be transformative, but only if he has a relationship with Christ,
Yeah.
because there are so many situations that he's in where you need discernment. You need to hear from the Holy Spirit. And so there are levels of Christianity. There are a lot of Christians in these various denominations that they're Christian by label, but they don't know Christ. They don't have a relationship. They don't know what it means to be guided by the Holy Spirit. And so you ask me if he's a Christian. He is a Christian because he says he's a Christian. His parents were Christians and all this stuff like
But
that.
that could be cultural as opposed to a spiritual
But here's what I
cleansing.
believe. I believe that being shot in the ear had a deeper significance, because I think God has been trying to speak to him for a long time, and that God has wanted him to humble himself. And so is he humbling himself? Maybe. Maybe he is, and maybe he's growing in his faith with Christ. And if he does grow in his faith in Christ, I think he would be unstoppable.
It's just starting. I mean, we're kind of resting in this wonderful sense of a miracle.
Where there are 2 months for the
Yeah.
people in power to wreak havoc.
Yeah.
And so the only thing that I believe is important for us to emphasize is that we have to continue praying and fasting, or whatever people were doing that led up to the election. I believe the election of Donald Trump in 2016, I believe he was elected by a landslide in 2020. I believe that election was stolen. In 2024, again, God's intervention, but we need to keep praying
Yes.
for his will to be done, because I don't believe his will was done during the between 2016 and 2020. There were some good things done, but I think there were some bad things done. And so to have this great administration, and to have America start moving in the right direction, to begin to really uproot some of the things that's wrong, we're going to need, God's hand in the selection of these political appointments. Even the cabinet members, there are certain people that should not go into the next Trump administration. So my most important message for people is to pray about all of these things, and pray fervently, just like you prayed for President Trump to get elected in 2016, and maybe 2020 and 2024. Now we need to pray for these other things.
I was thinking about the last 4 years and the just anarchy of what has happened, Antifa riots, and nobody doing anything about it. And literally,
Don't you mean Black Lives Matter and Antifa?
yeah, I do. I just want to leave that for you to say, but I don't mind saying. Listen, I'm not afraid of the truth. It's all I have. I'm a Christ follower. He said he was truth.
Here's one of the first things that I would like to see this happen now, is that those people, and some of them we knew, our neighbors, the people that were arrested, some of them have lost their lives around January 6th. I mean, they can't be made whole, the ones that have lost loved ones, but that injustice needs to be addressed.
Yes.
Because they had legitimate concerns.
Yeah.
They should have been able to protest just like Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and they should not have been destroyed and called insurrectionists for going to the people's house to protest.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it was a setup. They created a scenario that made it look like. Listen,
I
couldn't
know
be an
it was
insurrection.
it was
Couldn't be
totally.
an insurrection, and they feared for the lives with people who had no weapons. What were they going to insurrect with? If they came with ARs and they came in to take over, and we're going to, maybe you'd have a case. These people are just sitting there with their flags and crazy hats on,
But
and
the
they.
lies that surrounded
Yeah,
that. At one
yeah.
time, they were saying that 5 police officers lost their lives. The only people that lost their lives, were, I believe, were a couple of Trump supporters.
Ashley Babbitt was shot as she.
And there was a lady, a woman that was beaten, and and she died.
Mm.
And they would not render assistance to Capitol Hill Police. They need to be held accountable.
I agree.
For all of these things.
So here's the tricky part, though, Carol. So if one thing that Trump has said already is, I didn't know what I was doing the first time. I'd never been president.
Well, he surrounded himself with the wrong people, and he didn't listen to people who were trying to help him.
Exactly. But think about the pressure. There is no job like the president of the United States. There's no way to even reference something in your life to say it must be like this. I know
he never got a chance because
Never
in
got a chance.
2016, do you remember the riots
Yeah.
and just the world went upside
which
down?
they're going to try to do again. They're going to do it again. Why wouldn't they?
Well,
and make it ungovernable for him to get his policies in play. They've
I
already
don't
proven
think that they're going to be able to do it as effectively, just like this election could not be stolen as easily. And so now they have to explain the 15 million vote
Yeah.
discrepancy. Where did those Democrat voters
Yeah.
go? So we know their tactics and their strategies. I'm hoping that better people will be appointed.
Well,
And
he's
that-
already doing that. He's already bringing in Robert Kennedy Jr.
Oh yeah,
talking
I'm not talking
about
about those. Yeah, those people are great and
Yeah.
they're new, but I'm afraid about some of those members of Congress.
you don't
and
think he's
various
learned his
people.
lesson after
It's
after
not about
Millie
him- it's not
abandoned
about
him
learning his lesson.
as far as how to choose accurately who's going to be best supportive of
We
his.
we don't have enough time to talk about that, but his campaign, he won, and so you can say he did things right, but no, some things were wrong. Like when people asked about Project 2025 and the people that were running the campaign at the time, they were later fired, but they pretended not to know who the Heritage Organization was and what the Project 2025 was. It wasn't a Trump a, document. It was not created by the campaign, but every conservative knows about the Heritage Organization and 2025 project that had been ran for a while. And so to deny it and, distance yourself from that conservative position on certain issues like the sanctity of human life and families, the importance of traditional families, those things came from advisors. And so there are policies and some of the things that have been done, with the Republican platform that shows that the wrong people were making some of those decisions. And if you say this, all of a sudden, you're an enemy. But it's important to speak truth. And for myself, I have decided pretty much I don't mind being on the outside. And I felt like for this election cycle that the Lord told me to wait and watch. And so I did not, rush out there and endorse President Trump. I did not work with the campaign the way I did in 2016 and 2020. I did not go to rallies and stand up holding Blacks for Trump signs. I felt like the Lord put me in a different role and that it's important to have people that support all the goals. I love Donald Trump. I support it all, but there has to be a place for truth speakers. There has to be a place that if I tell someone, and there were things that I saw them doing that were wrong, they later changed, that I privately tried to get through, through people that I knew or Don Jr., sending messages and that type of thing. They never responded. So that worries me that, I'm not that important, but to be successful, they have to be willing to not view everyone who is critical as an enemy.
If there was one thing that has been a challenge when it comes to Trump's character. And of course, you can always go back to the old stuff, but I'm like, look, if he's not a Christian and you're in the 80s and you live in New York and you're a billionaire, do what you want. I mean, that you're going to be a hedonist. Who wouldn't be? So I think that stuff is different. You know, we all have past that we could
But
be
you know, this
uncomfortable.
one change that. Go ahead.
Well, what I was getting at was this. There's one character trait that he really needs to get a handle on, and that's he seems a little prideful. He does seem to not want to say, I'm sorry for that, or take responsibility. And pride comes before a fall. God hates pride more than anything.
But he did have a fall, and that was the 2020 election was stolen, but God allowed that to happen. And I believe that if he had humbled himself during that time,
That's what I mean. He doesn't
that
humble
God,
himself that
I
well.
believe that it could have turned out differently.
He doesn't humble himself well. And this isn't a criticism.
But you asked me, you know, do I believe he's a Christian? I think that he's coming along.
Yeah.
And after he was shot, we saw him humble himself some, and then we also heard him say, you know, it's great that he turned his head at the right time. But then later, you know, he said, I'm here because of God. And surely he's there for God Almighty, because of God, because it was multiple, you know, groups that were trying to assassinate him and probably still are.
Still are.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. So God has protected him.
It
and
seems like
he can be more powerful if he does, you know, humble himself. And so he needs to do his own prayers. He doesn't need 30 pastors with their hands on his shoulders.
For photo ops. I don't like any of that.
He needs to be spending his private time with God. He needs to be reading the Bible. He needs to be listening, but also knowing that when God speaks, he doesn't speak like us talking. Mm-hmm. It's through hunches. It's through things that you come across. It's through people. He needs to know how to hear God and how to act on it. And that's something you learn as you mature as a Christian.
And it's hard to do even when you aren't the president.
For all of us, yeah. But you know, something you learned it
pressure.
over time. And I believe that God wants him to be successful and that he could really be so transformative that he is America's reprieve. Mm-hmm. We have a reprieve.
I agree.
But that 2 Chronicles 7:14 still applies. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and forgive their sin and heal their land. That's a conditional statement. And I think we are at a moment where that could play out. Mm-hmm. But people need to understand it.
So for the Christians who believe that God has intervened, that has shown us grace and mercy, I don't think this is a time for celebration as much as a time of deep gratitude, to get back on your face and say, Lord, I can't believe you pulled this off and helped us. We felt abandoned at one point, because the truth is, we are butchering millions and millions of children every year. We started the transgender movement and mutilating our children. The United States is what I'm getting at.
I mean,
we have to be called to account for that.
Well, Brad, one of the things that's really grieved me and perplexed me is that I thought America was a good nation. I thought we were all those things that I learned as a child. And when I actually look at the things that we've been involved with over the years and how we export evil, we're not such a great country. Yeah. And so God has to hold us accountable. Like God punished ancient Israel, and they were defeated by their enemies. They were sent off to exile. Why would America think that she'll get a better deal?
Especially when Israel was his chosen people and the apple of his life. So obviously he's going to hold his own. And as believers, we're grafted in. We are Israel. We are that group of people. We're part of that giant line of lineage of God's work on earth through the Jews. We had millions of believers who do care about Christ, who do care about
what we need to do is that it's not over yet, like you're saying, okay?
No, we're just getting started.
And so there's so many things that those of us who are God-fearing, Bible-believing Christians need to do. And, you know, all of us we're supposed to be humble. And I deal with the temptation to say, I told you so. Because usually I did, and I was right. And it's kind of hard not to kind of rub it in. Right. Not to wait for someone else to say, well, Carol told us so. Right. But I think that that we have this opportunity, this reprieve, that maybe America gets to exist a while longer. But it is going to take a revival. It's going to take change,
But
and
that's
so
the
we have to
church.
go back.
That's the church.
No, that's all of us. We are the church.
But like you said, when you read the scripture, it starts with my people called by my, not the non-believers. My people will be responsible for the moral thing.
And you know something, if we carried ourselves the way we're supposed to as believers, I believe that we would be so winsome and attractive that we would bring in more non-believers who would become believers. But what's happened with the Republican Party and various, when it comes to religion, is that there are people that see political gain in calling themselves a Christian and manipulating, the flock. And so we always need to be careful of being used by people that, and sometimes they're pastors, that are corrupt, but they know exactly what to say. And so all of us need discernment. But at this moment, it really is a 2 Chronicles 7:14 moment. It's not a time to just celebrate and bask. It's a time to thank God for the reprieve. But we need to be praying, what shall I do next? What are you asking me to do?
Yeah.
Because, we have a prayer that was answered, but there's something that comes after that.
Yeah.
And
maybe
it'll be
even the
different from
harder
each
work.
of us. It will be
Yeah.
different for each person, maybe.
But we, one of the another disparaging moniker that's been thrown our way is Christian nationalists, and I think
that was done to silence the church and
Yeah.
to prevent people from being active, and
Yeah.
it didn't work. And the lawfare against Donald Trump didn't work because the American people, that they have common sense and they have that ingrained God-given conscience. They know right from wrong. And so they defied all the lies of the media because all of us have a BS detector, and that's our conscience.
Amen.
And our discernment that comes from that relationship with Christ and our common sense.
Well, and we talked earlier about how the left has infantilized Black Americans, especially men, and turned them into children as though they should be. And they,
well, I
and
would
you
say
should,
the women, because the women out there fighting for abortion rights when
it's
their
horrific.
whole population is being decimated.
being decimated. But the point I brought that up is that we should be deeply offended when we are treated with such disdain, that we're so stupid and so childlike that just listen to us and do and behave as we demand. And that isn't just talking about Black men. It's about Americans. We're
Right.
not stupid. We saw what was happening. We were being gaslit. They were saying the economy is better than it's ever been. And I'm going, I can't afford eggs.
I never saw lying brought to the level that it has been. I don't know whether it's just this past administration, but the media cooperated in such a way that people were just being barraged with lie
Yeah.
after lie after lie after lie, but yet they were able to see through it.
Yeah.
And one of the prayers that I have prayed over the years, and I have encouraged other people to pray, was that the spirit of deception over America would be broken. This landslide election of Donald Trump would suggest that that spirit of deception has been broken over many people, and it's not as strong as it once was as a stronghold. And I think that's another prayer point for people. For some people that we should consider is to pray for that spirit of deception over certain
Good.
groups to be broken.
That's good. I mean, our only battle is not new. The battle is the same. It's truth and lies. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. He's the immutable truth from which all truth derives. And he said, the father of lies is your problem. Lying is literally the way, the nomenclature, the communication style of the enemy. That's all they can do is counterfeit
Right.
what Christ is, which is pure truth. And the people did see through it. But even more so than that, Carol, when I watch one of the greatest advocates for the Bible and its importance and its sacredness to change how the world should work is coming from a non-Christian, Jordan Peterson, who is for the last 10 years.
He interviewed me in the spring.
So,
Yes.
but his respect for the scriptures
Oh, I know.
is and he's not a Christian. When I see Joe Rogan saying maybe I should think about Jesus, he was very much more.
Well, let me tell you this. I spoke at Princeton on October 4th, and I met with one of my former colleagues who described himself as not very religious, but he asked me my advice about the country that he studies. That it's prosperous now, but the morality of the people has fallen to the point that there's so much chaos coming from the prosperity, and he was willing to concede that there were problems, that they really did need religion and faith, that they needed
but,
this.
But a lot of secular people are coming to this
Yeah.
conclusion. Here's what's fascinating to me, Carol. Not even necessarily that they're going to become a Christian, even though many are leaning that way, like Russell
Well, they
Brand.
know that for the society that it's needed.
When Richard Dawkins said, "I am a cultural Christian," Richard Dawkins, the spearhead of the New Atheist movement,
Right.
said, "I would rather see beautiful cathedrals in England than a mosque."
Right.
He realized the difference between Christianity and how it affects the world, and Islam or atheism or Marxism. He saw. I can't deny this. I
Well,
don't.
Samuel Huntington, he was this eminent professor at Harvard. He wrote a book, The Clash of Civilizations, and it talked about Islam and how it was growing and what it was, the dangers it was going to pose for our society. And around the time that his book came out, I believe it was the 1990s, and he was an elderly man, it was not politically correct. Fast forward to today, he was spot on.
Prescient.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess that if we see that a spiritual realm is been revealed to even the secular folks, which is beautiful. If God is speaking and purging the conscience of a
Right.
non-believer, he's on the move. But
That makes me think of what's the song that he is marching?
you mean, are you talking about "The Truth is Marching On"?
Yes.
Well, that's from the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Well, let's finish this truth with this last question to you, Carol, because you're always so articulate and so real and vulnerable and strong and powerful. And I'm not just trying to lift you up, but I think that when somebody faces the difficulties you have and been attacked by people that look like you or people that used to be friends, and because you suddenly decided to think differently, that you're attacked, that is a martyrdom to a certain degree, soft martyrdom, but it's okay. You're a Christ follower. You accept that. That's
But do you know my story about martyrdom?
I don't know that I do.
Well, part of the time when I had my Christian conversion experience in the late 1990s, and it was a deeply, I guess they all deeply religious experiences that I had. And I felt that God spoke to me and said, "I've called you to be a martyr." And I've always wondered, what that meant, because I certainly martyred my career.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure if it's a literal martyr, but I see how people hate you. There are people that think that, I'm making money off of other people's suffering, and that I'm saying I'm being mean, and I realize that my life could be taken. I don't have all these security guards around me, but I also believe that God knows exactly the date, time, and manner of my death, and that we are all going to die, and that we should worry less about when we are going to die and more about hearing God say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Well done." And make your life count for something, because you can play it safe all of your life and just kind of go along and not speak up and do these things. But when you're on your deathbed, you may regret what you didn't do.
Well, I'm at that place and age in my time when I'm leaving a legacy. That's all I have left is what can I leave behind? Because I do believe I'm going into perfection. I'm going to be in the realm of God where I belong.
Well, I want crowns. I want as many as I can get.
Well, I'm going to ask you one last question that you're going to give to my subscribers who are part of the Mighty 10,000. I always have a special guest question that only they get to hear. But I would like you to leave the church in America. Obviously, we care about the church worldwide, but you and I are Americans. This is our territory. This is what we're responsible for. And so moving forward, don't gloat, Don't attack. Don't laugh or mock or ridicule. This is a place for humble, deep gratitude for what God has done. And we need to try to bring these people who are going nuts out there because they think they're going to be thrown into camps and that women are
They
now
think that we're going to do to them what they
they've
were
been
doing to
Amen.
us.
So tell the church, though, and that is if you truly believe you're a Christ follower, and by the way, you were never called to be Christian. You were called to be disciples.
Right.
That's harder. Christian's easy. Accept Christ. That's easy. But from that point on, the journey begins of working it out with fear and trembling. That's becoming a disciple. It's hard. And this church in America has been so weak, so cowardly, so superficial and expecting nothing of the disciplined life of the Christian that I believe that's why the church has crumbled so desperately. It needs to be revived. And we saw during Corona, warrior pastors that said, I ain't shutting down, and they thrive. Christians are looking for
And they were
warriors.
a tiny minority.
Tiny minority, but it also shows that Christians are looking for authentic Christianity. What shall be expected for our church to watch this country turn around spiritually as believers? Tell them what they need to do now, moving forward in helping Trump and helping this nation return to Christ. Hey guys, I'm interrupting my own interview. If you want the answer that you haven't heard yet, go to bradstine.com and join one of the 3 tiers. It is the militia of the mind, it is the warrior level, or it is the special forces. And then you'll get all kinds of special content and bonus answers to make you smarter than you could ever imagine. Go there now, jump on and join the Mighty 10,000. Well, thank you everybody for showing up again. I'm going to do something I don't already do. I'm going to give a little hug to my sister in Christ here.
All right.
Appreciate you so much. I'm so grateful not only for your warrior spirit and your life history that has proven the American dream is real, that to be a true believer changes our lives and gives us great rewards that we couldn't have gotten any other way.
Could I also make a pitch that's not very spiritual?
Please do.
I'm very active on X.
Okay.
And I have a large social media platform. In
Right.
fact, X, I have 300 and some thousand followers.
Many more than me.
But not many.
You're killing it.
Not many subscribers.
Okay.
And so I have a subscription.
Yeah.
I think it's $3 a month. That if people want to support the work that I do, that's one way you can do it. You can follow me. I want you to follow me on social media, and you don't have to subscribe to follow. But if you have an extra $3 that you were going to spend for coffee, that would be nice if you would.
It would be not only nice, but important. Folks, if you are a Christ follower, we have got to be one. The body is really the only community that we are commanded by God as to how to treat each other. We're all given certain gifts. We're all given certain callings. All of us have a calling. All of us have a gift. All of us have an expectation to tell God's story in the marketplace. Nobody's off the hook. You should be tithing to your church regularly, and you do need to see ministries that are out there that are unorthodox, like mine, or that have a very specific goal and a purpose. This woman has been attacked on this in our nation simply because she didn't bow the knee to Baal, and those people need to be protected and watched over and prayed over and given a donation. You got $3 a month, folks, for crying out loud. Let voices like this be heard. If you don't have the courage to get out in front of there and take the heat, somebody else will do it for you. Your job is to support them as a missionary. So you give them so go follow her, subscribe to her on X. I do. And we can fight this battle. It's not over yet. It's just begun. And there's no guarantee what God will or will not do to this nation, but we will have to suffer the consequences if we abandon serving him and begin to worship golden calves. So this is a reprieve, a great, gracious moment was given to us, but now the hard work comes because the enemy is now even more angry, and they come back with 7 more demons than they had the first time when they were ousted.
And we're going to be ready for them.
Well, we're going to be ready this time. Yeah, we ain't going to be voting, fake voting anymore. We've already found the 18 million Democrats that never existed, and that ain't going to happen again. But folks, remember this. You must be a warrior. And if you're not a Christ follower, Consider Jesus. It's the only man that ever proved himself to be actually God by doing impossible things, including rising from the dead. This is the answer to your dilemma. It's not in medical transitions. It's not in psychological explorations. It's in God changing your spirit and finding the God that made you and loves you. We appreciate you coming on. Brad Stine has issues. Remember, if they ever say you're politically incorrect, always say thank you for the compliment. That's the greatest thing you can be, because it means one thing. You are a truth teller. You're a Christ follower. We're the last truth tellers on earth. Let's bring in more people into the fold. Bring those who are hurting right now, thinking that this is a tragedy, to let them know, no, let us bring you to our family. You're going to love it here. The water is fine. And remember, I'm just a comedian, but I am a Christ follower. And I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, which is what? Just putting the woke back to sleep. Thank you, Carol. See you next Monday.
Thank you.